Now, anti-corruption movement Transparency International has released the 2024 Corruption Perceptions Index. South Africa remains below the global average. There are concerns that the country's efforts to fight graft have stagnated and there have been very few strides made in the past few years. Let's get a better understanding of the issues. Joining us is Mzwandile Banjathwa, who is a campaign coordinator for Corruption Watch. Mzwandile, it's great to talk to you. Thank you for coming on. I suppose these numbers give us some way of measuring how far we've come with corruption, but there definitely is a sense in the country that we haven't come very far.
It's not only the sense in the country, it's a global trend. What we are finding is that the survey gives us a comprehensive assessment of the perceived public sector corruption around 180 territories. And then it scores them based on the surveys that are then given by various institutions and also business people that would be in that particular country. When you look at the various regions, particularly the sub-Saharan region, it hasn't been doing that well. We are the lowest performing region globally with an average score of about 33 out of 100. It's also worth noting that 90% of the countries in the sub-Saharan region would score below 50, which would indicate a perception of widespread corruption. But we do have countries that would tend to do well in this survey. A country like Seychelles, for example, which is a leader in the region with a score of 72, followed by Cabo Verde at 62, and also Botswana and Rwanda at 52. But you also have low performers, a country like Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Somalia, and also Sudan, who are not performing very well. But when you look at South Africa, it has been quite a troubling trend that we have been noticing. I mean, over the past 10 years, South Africa has been ranging around 45 and 41. So between those numbers, the highest score that we ever received was in 2016. That was when we scored 45 and we were ranked 64 out of 180 countries. This year, unfortunately, we are scored 41. And we have also dropped in our ranking as well. So this is a very huge problem, and it points to our inefficiencies in dealing with the scourge of corruption in the country.
Yeah, it's very interesting that, and worth noting, Mzwandile, that the Corruption Perception Index is exactly that, right? It doesn't actually measure the actual corruption reported or experienced in the country. It is perceptions of corruption. How does that influence how we read these findings?
So it's very important to note that, and I'm glad you've also raised that, because it doesn't, in those perceptions that are given, it focuses particularly on public sector corruption. Things like bribery, diversions of funds, the use of public funds for private gain, and things like looking at whether or not the state is able to enforce integrity mechanism, or whether it's able to use its laws to protect whistleblowers or not. It does not look also on the private sector, things like maybe tax fraud, illicit financial flows, enablers of corruption, either be professionals like lawyers, accountants, and financial advisors, and so forth. It focuses mainly on public sector corruption. And in our region, in the sub-Saharan region, most of our perception come from people who do business in the region, and also entities like your African Development Bank.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, at the start of our discussion, you talked about corruption being a global phenomenon, not a South African one. And it shows from the findings, over 2/3 of countries have scored below 50 out of 100. And then there's another number that I wanted us to take a look at. 34 countries, 32 countries improved in their CPI scores between 2012 and 2024, but 47 countries declined in their scores.
It seems to be a trend throughout. There are those countries who tend to do some positive things and they would then grow, but in their growth, they would affect others who are not doing as well. So that tend to affect the global trend. But it points to governments generally not being able to deal with the issue and phenomenon of corruption. And it has been quite thematic throughout the history of the perception index to look at various thematic issues and try to link them to corruption. And this report particularly focuses on the link between the crisis that is now happening globally, corruption, and linking it with the issue of climate crisis, be it the crisis that is happening in the USA, the wildfires there, and the floods that we are also seeing here in South Africa, and whether or not South Africa is able to manage the kind of funds that we have been receiving. Have we been asking the right questions as a country, be it civil society, the media? Have we been asking the right questions as to how much have we been receiving? How much has been put into good use? Where has it gone? Is there clear transparency? Are we getting value for money from those funds? Because some of these funds come in a form of loans, they come in a form of aid and so forth.
It's also very interesting that the report makes a really strong link between corruption and the potential to put climate change efforts at risk, Mzwandile. How is that connection made?
No, it's made in two counts. And the first one is that we seem to be seeing a trend where you would have lobby groups who would affect policy directions of various countries and undermine climate efforts in various countries in their use of money to corrupt, be it politicians, and the use of bribes and so forth. But secondly, there are funds that have been made available for climate change, but they might not be used the way they're supposed to be used. They might be redirected, they might be repurposed, they might even go to private use and not to the intended recipients. And in most of these cases, people who are affected would be the poorest of the poor, who would be affected by whether these floods that we are seeing, displacement through fire, wildfires, and so forth.